The Bernese Oberland highlands are one of Switzerland's loveliest natural regions. The River Aare has its source here. It's the longest river whose entire course lies within Swiss borders. Around 260 cubic kilometers of water flows down from the Alps every year, more than 5 times the volume of Lake Constance. During the Ice Age, the meltwater from the Aare glacier gouged out no fewer than 7 deep gorges in a rock plateau. One of these gorges is today the bed of the River Aare. For some, it's an eerie place. The gorge is said to have been the home of a mythical many-legged dragon. The sheer rock walls rise up to 180 meters. The narrowest point is just 1 meter wide. The Aare flows quite sedately through the gorge here, but meltwater from the high mountain regions can behave quite differently. The Trümmelbach, fed by the waters of the Jungfrau, Mönch and Eiger, has worn no fewer than 10 waterfalls into the rock. Over 20,000 tons of debris every year have created a partly subterranean ravine through which the water rages with full force. But even in this whirling, churning chaos and infernal thundering, there are moments of poetic beauty. It's no surprise that this incredible landscape has inspired so many artists and writers. No fewer than 72 waterfalls plunge into the Lauterbrunnen Valley below, each more impressive than the last. The valley was ground out of the stone by glaciers. Its almost sheer rock walls are several hundred meters high. But the water of the Staubbach Falls doesn't always reach the bottom. It's often completely dispersed by the wind. In the 1930s, J.R.R. Tolkien visited the Lauterbrunnen Valley. He was so impressed by it that he immortalized it in his Lord of the Rings trilogy, creating a place that is surrounded by high rock walls with cascading waterfalls. Rivendell, the elven town. Once the water has left the mountains, all the roaring, booming and foaming is over. The white Lütschine flows tamely towards the Aare. After leaving the gorge, the Aare itself becomes a long, peaceful river. This is partly due to canalization. Malicious tongues claim that the Aare isn't actually a river, but more like a 288-kilometer-long production site for the energy sector. But despite the power stations and channeling, there are several places where the Aare shows its natural face. In nature reserves such as the Alte Aare wetlands, at least parts of the River Aare are left to flow as they wish. Conservation with an ulterior motive. The wetlands provide a floodplain, protecting people and their villages from flooding. One long-absent creature now turns up more frequently in Switzerland and leaves very obvious traces. During the day, it's rarely seen at all. Only after dark can it sometimes be glimpsed. The fact that beavers can now be observed more often is the result of a successful reintroduction program. Since the 1950s, 141 beavers have been released into the wild. Today, they number over 3,000. They're notorious lumberjacks. As they can't climb, they fell the trees instead to get at their juicy leaves. If they judge the water level in their territorial water to be too low, they will build highly effective dams. But that's not to everyone's liking. Beavers only eat plant food, and they're not fussy. Anything green seems to suit their palates. Their diet consists of an astonishing 300 different varieties of plants. Beavers are either solitary or live in small family groups. Males and females pair for life. It's impossible to tell them apart. Only beavers themselves recognize a male from a female. For nature, the beaver is a blessing. Where it builds dams and creates pools, the groundwater level rises and plants flourish. The tree felling allows more light and warmth to reach the forest floor. And its pools are also valuable biotopes, full of life. The nature conservation area that this beaver has selected as its habitat looks like an impenetrable jungle. It's hard to believe that this jungle is a tiny island in the middle of an industrial area. In Switzerland, water creates landscapes that one wouldn't normally expect to find here otherwise. Moors. In the Entlebuch Biosphere Nature Reserve between Bern and Lucerne, there are more than 100 moors and upland bogs. They were created after the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago. Over the centuries, huge areas of bog were drained as humans needed the land, or they harvested the peat for heating. But in Entlebuch, 2,000 hectares of moor remained, a unique habitat. Inconspicuous but quite special, the Alpine blue grass has adapted to the brief Alpine summer. It doesn't form seeds that must go through the elaborate germination process. The grass is viviparous and bears fully germinated seeds, including greenery and roots. There's a creature hiding in this picture. This green huntsman spider is a female, easily identified by its entirely green camouflage. The males have a red stripe down their backs. Not all insect eaters have legs. The butterwort's flowers are white or purple. Larger creatures, such as the smooth newt, have no reason to fear the plant. But for insects, the leaves of the butterwort are a death trap. The plant digests the insects alive. The same goes for the sundew. It catches its prey with sticky glands. The sundew relies on its carnivorous meals. It can't get enough nutrients from the poor soil of the moor. Moors are very damp regions, formed among other things by rainwater that cannot drain away. In Entlebuch, a very different landscape has also been created by rainwater, not stagnant, but flowing. The rainwater has created a bizarre landscape out of the limestone mountain, but the Schrattenfluh wasn't formed like the gorges in the Alps by minute quartz particles in the water grinding down the rock. The Schrattenfluh was created by a chemical reaction. The slightly acid rainwater dissolved the limestone, creating fissures and grooves. The Schrattenfluh is as full of holes as a Swiss cheese. Some 250 kilometers of caves have been discovered by researchers to date, but the Schrattenfluh is probably laced with many more holes, shafts and tunnels. For a long time, the question of where the leached rainwater flowed to was a mystery. Some of it covers impressive distances. Subterranean streams carry it almost 20 kilometers away to Lake Thun. The Aare flows through the lake as well. Lake Thun is one of nearly 1,500 lakes in Switzerland. Apart from the coldest mountain lakes, they're generally biodiverse habitats. Several Swiss lakes, including Lake Sempach here, are home to a highly controversial creature that can turn fishermen and fish farmers apoplectic with anger. Their complaint? It eats too many fish and is emptying the lake. The cormorant used only to visit Switzerland as a migrating bird. It stayed a short while and then moved on. But then, an increasing number of the birds decided not to leave Switzerland at all. The number of breeding pairs has meanwhile risen to around 1,500. At Lake Sempach, there's a little colony nesting in 3 or 4 trees. Each nest holds between 2 and 4 chicks. There's fair division of labor among cormorants. One adult bird guards the brood, keeps them warm in the cold, and provides shade in the heat. The other adult bird tirelessly supplies food. The young beg for food by nudging the adult bird's beak. The adult bird stores the fish it has caught in its throat pouch, which the chicks empty quickly. The biggest chick has the best chance of survival, because not all of them will survive. The smaller ones must ensure that they don't get a raw deal on the food. Life in the breeding colony has one disadvantage. One never knows what surprises will come from above. Whether cormorants are actually overfishing the lake has not yet been scientifically proven, but even if they were, they're unlikely to let themselves be chased away from the Swiss lakes now. Slowly but surely, the Aare flows to its final destination. The further it flows, the more densely populated the countryside. Little traditional villages, like picturesque Büren, dot its banks. Finally, in Koblenz in Switzerland, the moment arrives. The Aare flows into the Rhine, having traveled an impressive 288 kilometers, all of it inside Switzerland. A few kilometers upstream, the otherwise sedate Rhine River demonstrates that it is quite capable of a bit of drama. At its source, however, the mighty river is more idyllic, almost like a little mountain stream. But the birds are well advised to stay close to the banks, because in the center of the river, all hell breaks loose. In summer, 600 cubic meters of water descends here every second, making the Rhine Falls one of the biggest waterfalls in Europe, even though at 23 meters, it's far from being the highest. The water's sheer power can clearly be seen in the raging flood. The water of the Alps, the source of life in Europe.